Thanks, deep voice narrator.
You're very welcome.
NBC News Radio, I'm Brian Shook. The White House is facing criticism that some of its most influential aides are using private communication to conduct public business. Ivanka Trump and her husband Jared Kushner are under scrutiny after their lawyer told the House Oversight Committee that they are indeed using private email and a chat program while working on behalf of the United States. President Trump often criticized Hillary Clinton for her use of private email during the campaign. The special counsel watch is officially underway. Attorney General Bill Barr was seen entering the White House, and sources close to the investigation are indicating to reporters to prepare for the release of Robert Mueller's report on Russia trying to influence the 2016 presidential election. That probe has already resulted in more than 30 indictments. America's top Marine is sounding alarms about President Trump's border plan. Kevin Tripp reports.
The LA Times reports that General Robert Neller believes the emergency declaration sending troops to the southwest border poses an unacceptable risk to the Marine Corps combat readiness and solvency. In memos obtained by the Times, the general says he's had to cancel or reduce military exercises and cut back on urgent repairs. So far, no response from the administration. Kevin Tripp, NBC News Radio.
A Florida man is admitting he sent explosive devices to leading critics of President Trump. Cesar Sayoc pled guilty in federal court to sending the explosives to CNN, former President Barack Obama, and 14 others. He agreed to plead guilty and faces sentencing on September 12th. Arizona Senator Martha McSally is defending former Senator John McCain to President Trump.
I wanted to make sure he understood how I felt about Senator McCain and how Arizona felt about Senator John McCain, and he heard me.
McSally described her Tuesday conversation with the president today at Luke Air Force Base. You're listening to the latest from NBC News Radio.
Education is a right, not a privilege, and it is the civil rights issue of our generation. And Latino students disproportionately bear the crux of our educational crisis. The campus of Cal State San Bernardino is pleased to host the annual LEAD Summit, along with hundreds of viewing sites across the nation and globe, working together with our media partners to raise awareness and enhance the intellectual, cultural, and personal development of our community's educators, administrators, leaders, parents, and students. Please join us for Latino Education and Advocacy Day as we convene those sharing a common interest and commitment to the educational issues that impact Latinos. For more information, please visit leadsummit.csusb.edu. Again, that website is leadsummit.csusb.edu. The LEAD Summit, Latino Education and Advocacy Days, taking place at Cal State San Bernardino.
Thursday, March 28th at Cal State San Bernardino. The LEAD Summit starts at 8 a.m.
Miss your favorite show? Download the podcast at KCAAradio.com.
Are you ready for a new experience? To see life from another point of view? New hope, new expression, new joy. This is your radio hour. Welcome to Viewpoint with Father John.
And welcome, friends. You are tuned into KCAA Radio, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, or on the World Wide Web at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John, and I am your host, Father John Reid. By the way, you can follow this show on both Facebook and Instagram at Viewpoint with Father John. Come join this family. I enjoy some of the questions you send me through the Facebook, and I enjoy the conversations we have back and forth on Instagram, as I'm learning more and more how to do that because I am not of high tech skill, but I appreciate those of you who are sending me notes and stuff. I really do enjoy hearing from you. All of God's children are endowed with extraordinary purpose and ability. I'm on a quest to help as many as possible in fully realizing their divinely inspired potential. Disposing a false narrative and embracing genuineness inspires clarity of purpose. My role is to help overcome self-imposed limitations in realizing one's spiritual potential. And brothers and sisters, Viewpoint with Father John is a listener-supported program. You're the ones who keep us on the air each week. So please go to viewpointwithfatherjohn.com, click on the support button, and give what you can. I truly thank you for your support. Also, I'd like to invite you to buy a copy of my book, Close Your Eyes So You Can See Me. The premise of this book is that we are all God's children and that we do not need more self-improvement. Rather, we need self-discovery. Close Your Eyes So You Can See Me is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and almost every other online bookstore. So get your copy today and share it with a friend. And tonight we have a very interesting show. You know, we talk a lot about life, and there's stuff that goes beyond life, beyond what we see with our eyes. And so tonight my guest is Eric Perry. Eric started his career in the sixth grade with his first paranormal encounter at the House of Seven Gables, when he saw his first shadow person and was touched and heard, "Get out." I have friends that get that from their wives. And in 2010, Eric started Central New Hampshire Paranormal Society with like-minded friends. After hundreds of cases, decided to start a new team called Haunted in New England, and the rest is history. Eric is an accomplished writer, video producer, photojournalist, 2 times New England Paranormal Award winner, and International Award winner. Eric is also the father of 3 wonderful children. Eric's favorite locations are Pennhurst Asylum. I'm crazy about that place too. Eastern State Pen, and the tunnels of Salem, Massachusetts. Sorry, that was a little play on words there about it being an asylum. Eric, welcome to the show.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well. How are you, sir?
I'm doing very good this evening.
I appreciate you being with us tonight. I know it's much later where you are than where we are. I'm going to have you talk just a little louder into the phone if I could get you to do that. And so you had your first experience with paranormal encounters in the 6th grade. Tell me a little bit about this.
We were on a class trip to the House of Seven Gables in Salem, Massachusetts. Didn't know anything about paranormal activities. Didn't know anything about that. I was just a teenager and just having a good time in 6th grade. And I decided to be a little naughty boy and stayed behind and wanted to touch a few of the objects.
Okay.
I was down in the dining room of the House of Seven Gables when I touched a tabletop, and all of a sudden, I felt this cold breeze really come right by me. Then I saw a shadow go from left to right on the wall. Then I felt the cold touch, and then I heard, "Get out," in a very grumbly voice. And I ran like a little schoolgirl back to the school bus. I didn't know what that was.
I'm not sure I wouldn't do any different in that case. And so that was your first experience. Did that cause a lot of questions for you, or did you talk to anybody about it, or did you kind of keep it to yourself for a while?
I actually kept it to myself until I became like 16, 17, when I kind of took a job that would propel me to go into the paranormal. I became a grave digger for a local cemetery.
Ah, that I was told that's a dead-end job.
It is a very dead-end job.
Nick is looking at me through the glass and rolling his eyes like you had to do it.
Yeah.
I know what that job is like because years ago I was on the grounds crew at Bellevue Cemetery in Ontario, so I do have some experience in that, as we used to say, being on the business end of the shovel. So what was the cemetery you worked at?
It was Pine Grove Cemetery in Lynn, Massachusetts.
Mm-hmm.
And the cemetery has a notorious being the second longest wall in the world, cemetery wall in the world. But we also had a grave where we had one gravestone and nothing around it. Come to find out that the gentleman that died in that plot actually died of smallpox, and they figured he might pass it on to the other dead, so they kept him in one little corner to himself.
Oh, okay. And did something happen at that gave you another experience, or?
Yeah, during my time as I was working there, I worked there for a couple of years. I kept seeing different shadows during the day, which, come to find out, I didn't think shadows would come out and play during the day, but they did. And my crew that I was running were like, "What is that?" You see out in the middle of the Civil War part of it, you see a shadow person standing in the middle of the flags.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You see them like they're walking towards you in the cemetery.
Wow, that had to be quite an experience.
It was definitely like The Walking Dead, pretty much coming at you.
I bet it was. I bet it was. Now, is that when you started getting some friends together, or what kind of perpetuated what you're doing?
Well, the funny thing is, I kind of put it off. I decided, I was being a teenager, 16, 17, 18 years old. It was the 80s. It was heavy metal music, long hair, girls, stuff like that. I was being a typical teenager.
Mm-hmm.
I said, nah, I'll wait and see what happens. And as I got older and older, when I hit roughly about my 40s, about 39, 40, I said to myself, I need something different in my life.
Okay.
And I took that change and took every part of that change and put it into the paranormal. I tried to get on other paranormal teams at the time, but no one was taking anybody on.
Okay.
Until I joined a team called New England Ghost. And they took me on. And they trained me for a year. And I was trained by a demonologist, Stephen Flannery, here in New England. He actually taught me how to actually do paranormal investigations.
Now, what kind of things do you learn in the training? Because most people don't get to see what takes place in this. So when you're going through the training, what are the skills that they try to instill upon you?
They want you to open up your excuse me for a second. Mm-hmm. They want you to open up your senses. They want you to rely more on your senses. What you're feeling, what you're seeing, what you're hearing, and to open up your mind more.
Okay.
It's the equipment, and they taught me how to use the equipment that goes with the investigations, but you have to go with the mental part of it and try to understand what you're seeing.
Okay. Now, what kind of equipment would that entail?
IR cameras, digital recorders, motion sensors.
Now, IR cameras, you're talking about infrared, correct?
Correct. Infrared cameras. SLS cameras that we use nowadays are the stick figure cameras that catch stuff that is not in the room, and you just catch it on camera. It actually turns it into a stick figure.
Wow. Okay, I didn't know about those. That's interesting. Now, did you also use recording equipment for voices that you may not hear with your ears but might be captured on tape or digital recording?
Yeah. Yes, we do use digital recorders. When I first started, my very first investigation that I did with my own team was at Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum.
Mm-hmm.
And all we had were cameras with flashes, the instant cameras that you just sit there with a flash, take pictures, and then go have the film developed.
Right.
We just had those, and we had digital recorders, and we had an EMF meter with us. That's all we had when we first started out. And it was when we were at Trans-Allegheny, we weren't expecting half the stuff that we saw. We watched a ball move around a room by itself.
Mm.
I watched a shadow person come up in solitary and slam doors in front of me.
Wow.
And we caught a cigar smoke from one of the doctors, and we traced it all the way up to the doctor's lounge.
Wow. Well, I'm curious, when you talk to people on the street about what you're doing, what kind of responses do you get? Do you get some people who are just afraid of the topic? Do you get people who are very interested? What's your experience been like?
Sometimes you get the jokes like, oh, you're a Ghostbuster. I'm like, yeah. I said, who are you going to call? You're going to call me.
Nice.
And when you get the responses, sometimes you get really negative ones.
Mm-hmm.
Because they say that the paranormal field is a fringe science, that we haven't made the breakthrough to prove there's life after death. But in my eyes, I've seen things and I've felt things that I can't explain.
Well, yeah, and my former superior bought the old Warner house, Warner's Brothers films, And that was very haunted. And he had from the local university, because I don't have the signed thing to be able to say their name on air, I won't do it. But one of the local universities that had paranormal type of parapsychology, that's what I'm looking for, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Department, they actually came out and documented stuff that was going on, like books would come off the shelf and open and close, like the bookbinders were wings, and coins would come out of nowhere and strike people. And they really put together a lot of evidence showing that this house wasn't just sort of haunted. This house was truly haunted, and would really pick who the entity liked and who they didn't like. And sometimes my former superior would have a dinner and invite different people and watch how the spirits would interact with them. And there was one person who turned out to be a total con artist, that one of the books literally chased him out of the house, flying like a bird, and coins just started coming out of nowhere, pelting this guy. So when my former superior was telling me about it, I thought, wow, okay, you've had some experience in this. But I think it's like so many other things, that we fear what we don't understand. And we also fear looking stupid or looking like we don't fit in. And so that's why a lot of people who have had experiences, I found, don't say anything about it, because they don't want to be labeled as crazy or on the fringe, or someone who's, smoked a little 420, I guess they refer to it now. So do you get that kind of response with people, or has it pretty much gained some traction now?
Well, back in 2010, when I started doing Central New Hampshire, it started picking up momentum.
Mm-hmm.
And it seemed like, because of the shows like Ghost Adventures, Taps,
mm-hmm.
All these shows that were coming out on TV, it seemed to start an insurgence of paranormal teams. You couldn't go on Facebook without finding a paranormal team.
Right.
My thought was, okay, these guys aren't going to last. Well, it's 2019. The teams that were from 2010, the new teams that are coming in 2019, are saying, we can do better than you guys. But you don't understand, when our teams that were back then, we had to learn. We had to earn our stripes to do what we do.
Right.
And we have so much valuable information to pass on to these other investigators that they don't understand what we're trying to help them understand.
Right. Yeah. Well, speaking about things of value, we're at our first commercial break, and if I'm going to have value after the commercial break, we better go to it. So my guest is Eric Perry, and we'll be back in 2 and 2.
The loss of a loved one is one of the most challenging experiences in a person's life. It's hard to know where to turn to make your loved one's final arrangements. Jesse Ruiz at Personal Funeral Planning in Ontario will treat you and your loved one with the respect you deserve. Jesse served in the Marine Corps in Desert Storm and understands what it takes to provide loyal, personalized, and empathetic service to those who need it most. The families of Michael Jackson, Brittany Murphy, Ed McMahon, and many others have trusted Jesse to provide them with the highest level of service and support. To work with Jesse, call 909-762-4027, 909-762-4027, or visit their website, www.4pfp.org. www.4pfp, as in personalfuneralplanning.org. Jesse Ruiz and Personal Funeral Planning, veteran-owned and operated, helping you plan a personal, lasting tribute for your loved one. www.4pfp.org.
Stardate, March 21st. By earthly standards, a hard vacuum surrounds the surface of the moon. Yet it's not a complete vacuum. The moon has a thin atmosphere. Much of the material that makes up the atmosphere comes from the surface. It's kicked off of rocks and dirt by the solar wind or by impacts by tiny space rocks. And some of the material may come from inside the moon, mainly from dormant volcanoes. Billions of years ago, volcanic activity might have given the moon a much thicker atmosphere. Bombardment by giant space rocks punched holes in the crust. That allowed molten rock to spill onto the surface. The magma contained hydrogen, oxygen, and other gases. Researchers say that some of the gases, including water vapor, could have formed an atmosphere that was thicker than that of present-day Mars. And it could have lasted for up to 70 million years. The moon's gravity just isn't strong enough to hold on to that much air, though. The solar wind stripped most of it away, blowing it off into space. But some of the water may have fallen back onto the surface, and some of it may still be on the moon today. It's hidden in the bottoms of craters at the lunar poles, which are always in shadow. I see traces of a vanished atmosphere. Look for the moon climbing into good view by about 10 or 10:30 the next couple of nights. The bright star Spica will stand to the lower right of the moon tonight and to the upper right tomorrow night. We have more sky-watching tips and much more about the universe in Stardate magazine. Subscription information at stardate.org. I'm Sandy Wood.
And welcome back. You are tuned to KCAA Radio, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM. We're on the World Wide Web at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John. I am your host, Father John Reid, and hello to all of our listeners in America and around the world, because we are getting letters from Brazil and Panama and Philippines and all over the world. So to our global community, welcome. My guest this evening is Eric Perry with Haunted in New England. And welcome back, Eric. We're talking a little about the field of paranormal activity. Can you tell us a little about some of the cases that you've been on that have really stood out in your mind?
Yeah, we had a case that was in Kentucky, New Hampshire, that was more than we thought it was going to be. We thought maybe it was just going to be a residual or an intelligent haunting investigation. And it turned out to be a poltergeist case.
Oh, okay.
Poltergeist cases are very rare in our field. And this one, we had everything from the TV turning on and off to the lights turning on and off, the doors opening and closing. And all our gear was sounding alarms from one end of the house to the other.
The reason I laugh is years ago, I have a counseling practice on the side. I'm a medical missionary as a priest. And years ago when I was in full-time practice, I had someone coming to me who was describing some of what you're talking about. They said the foam would fly across her apartment, that the stove would turn itself off and on, put the wall on fire behind the stove and then put it back out, and the TV going on and off. And I was ready to do what's called a 5150, which is a 72-hour hold here in California for psychological evaluation. Because I'm thinking she's hallucinating. And she says, please just look for yourself. So I thought, well, out of fairness, I'll go check it out. And so I did something I normally don't do. I made a house call. And as soon as we opened the door, the telephone flew off the stand across the room. The TV's going on and off. The stove is doing what she said. And I realized, oh, you have a poltergeist. And I almost hospitalized you for nothing. So yeah. And it's hard because people don't know who to call. And I'm not being funny with that. They don't know who to call or how to get help. Because when you call the church, you don't just go out and do an exorcism. There's a long process. First, there's psychological testing. There's different environmental testing to find out if you're hallucinating or if you drink a little too much or if this is something really going on. And so it could really be frustrating for people trying to get help. I've shared with you through our going back and forth that I am a trained exorcist, and I have been on some pretty hair-raising calls, to say the least. I've been dangled by my throat off the ground with witnesses there. So, have you had any experiences where you were either scratched or burnt or touched by the different entities? I know the one that touched you and told you to get out early in life, but since then, when you're investigating, have you been touched or made contact with?
Yeah, we've had a few cases where there was a couple cases. One of them was the Eagle Mountain House in Jackson, New Hampshire.
Mm-hmm.
We were told that it was children just playing around in the hallways, ghostly children and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But after we went over into the carriage house of the Eagle Mountain House, they didn't tell us that someone used a Ouija board.
Oh, okay.
As we were downstairs, I kept felt like I was being pulled to a corner.
Okay.
Of the building, and I was like, and I had a demonologist with me,
mm-hmm.
and he pulled me back and he said, "You stay here with me." And as we were standing there all talking, also we started to hear loud bangs upstairs.
Okay.
We ran up the stairs to find out what was going on, and as we were running upstairs, we didn't realize why when we were recording that you actually could hear "Get Out" on the recording.
Oh.
As we got upstairs, I looked to my left, and there's a man in overalls, an old farmer sitting in overalls in a chair. I'm like, "Can I help you?" And he disappeared. Looked to my right, same thing, all the way up the hallway. This happened.
Wow.
As we got to the end of the hallway, there was nothing disturbed. The room was fine.
Mm-hmm.
So on our way back, I felt somebody pull the back of my hair.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, whoa. And then the female investigator I had with me got touched on the shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, "Someone just touched me. Did you guys touch me?" We're like, "No, we're nowhere near you." Well, we get down to the middle of the hallway, and there was a room off to my left, and the chairs were all in a circle.
Mm-hmm.
And in the center of the circle is where they had the Ouija board at one point.
Oh, wow, okay. So that's where the vortex was.
Correct. So I walked into the vortex, not realizing it,
Mm-hmm.
and I felt a burning heat come down on top of me.
Oh, yeah.
And I could feel the heat, and I'm yelling for help, and no one can hear me.
Mm.
And next thing I know, the demonologist looks in the room. He goes, "Oh my God!" And he ran in there, and he reached in and pulled me out of the heat. He could feel the heat all around. He goes, "You're under a possession attack. I got to get you out of here."
Wow.
And he got me out of the building. But the words that were being used by the spirit
Mm-hmm.
were very profane language.
Yeah, don't
me.
Yeah, don't use them on the air. I can't afford the FCC notes.
No. They was using words that I can't use. They were very derogatory, and a lot had to do with killing me.
Yeah, we call them the George Carlin 7. But yeah, people don't realize that they can attack you physically, and that's why I was asking about it. And so they were trying to gain entrance. A lot of people don't know that they cannot enter you without your permission, but they'll trick you into giving your permission.
Right.
And
right. And that was one of the things that caught my attention. So he brought me back to the lobby of the main hotel.
Mm-hmm.
And sat me down, and he gave me his protection dagger that he used for his demonology. And I'm holding it, and all I could think of was killing him.
Wow.
And what I'm going to tell you next is a lot of people are like, wow. We had a Reiki master there with us and some other investigators. It took 20 people plus these two, the demonologist and the Reiki master, to fight this entity.
Wow.
And what I remember is coming out of my body, my soul coming out of my body, fighting with this inhuman thing.
This entity, right?
It was more like Van Helsing versus Dracula.
Okay.
That's how it felt like.
Well,
and it scared me to the point that I was so drained that I didn't know what to do. It took them over an hour to fight this creature.
Mm-hmm. I can believe it. Well, a lot of people don't know that there's a difference. There it's not all one thing. That a poltergeist is different than an entity. An entity is different than a demon. And so which is different than a ghost, which is just an unembodied spirit. Now, when you were going through your training, did they share with you some of the different categories that you're dealing with, or anything that you could share with our listeners?
Yes, the categories, they gave me 4 categories to go by. Mm-hmm. The 4 categories are residual, which plays itself like a tape recorder.
Right.
Back in time. Then there's the intelligent haunting, which more or less lets you know that it's there.
Interacts with you, right.
Correct. And then the third one was demons.
Right.
And the fourth one was poltergeist.
Which poltergeist is usually, from my training, gathered from pent-up emotion that gets personified. More women deal with poltergeist than men, at least the way I was trained. Does that go along with how you're trained?
Correct. We were told the definition I got for a poltergeist was angry ghost.
Right. Right.
And that was my major concern with dealing with like the poltergeist case in Kentucky and dealing with the inhuman or demon that I was dealing with in Jackson, New Hampshire.
Right, and there's another one called the Incubus, and that is a very powerful one I've had to deal with. And one of the things that I discovered was if it finds what you have any infirmities, it will go to that in order to weaken you, or if it finds out what your greatest fear is, will come as that because it feeds off the energy of the fear. Has that been your experience?
Yeah, we've had a few that have fed off our fear. I've had a couple of team members that have actually. Here's two examples I'll give you. One was in a director's home in Boston, New Hampshire. She ended up getting scratched across her face because she called the spirit Princess Buttercup, and she ended up with 3 scratch marks across her face. Not 2 months later, she ended up with a stroke.
Oh, wow.
Now, that was the first time that I've handled something like that. The second time, we were in the Haunted Victorian Mansion in Gardner, Massachusetts. And we had a cameraman. He was up on the 3rd floor. He's filming the crew that's up there investigating. The crew decided to antagonize the spirit up on the 3rd floor. Well, the spirit didn't like that. Ended up taking the cameraman and tossing him over the 3rd floor railing down a flight of stairs.
Wow.
And
did he survive?
He ended up with broken, bruised up and battered. But later on, not even 2 months later, again, he ended up in a stroke in a wheelchair.
Wow, that's something else. That is really something else. So there's some real danger that can take place with this that a lot of people don't realize. This is not something to fool around with, that you really need to know what you're doing with it. Well, those are really powerful experiences. Now, have you ever had a spirit attach itself to you? Do you know what I mean by that?
Yes, I actually, the one at Eagle Mountain House, actually, they thought they got rid of him out of me.
Mm-hmm.
I went home the next day. I thought everything was fine, great, dandy. Went to bed that Sunday night, hung my stuff up, did everything I usually do. Went to bed. About 2:30 in the morning, I felt these 2 icy hands come into my back.
Ooh.
And grab my lungs.
Mm-hmm.
and it got me up on all fours, and I couldn't breathe.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh. And next thing I know, I'm getting hit with my belt.
Wow.
And I had the marks, and I had to reach out to a friend of mine who is a demonologist in Rhode Island, Carl Johnson, to talk to him about it. And I had black and blue marks all over my arms.
Boy,
well, I went into work the next morning, and I told my boss, I said, hey, look what happened to me on my investigation. They're like, you okay? I'm like, yeah. As soon as I started telling them exactly what happened, all the pots and pans on the shelf flew off the shelf.
Well, that had to make for a tense moment.
My boss says, you go home. You're done for the day.
Yeah, I bet so. Oh, my goodness. That's quite an experience. And you know, a lot of people don't know this, but originally porcelain dolls were for housing spirits. That's what their purpose was. And that's why you have things like Annabelle and stuff that people don't realize. There's true stories with this stuff. And the Gabby, who I'm Eastern Orthodox, so I'm allowed to be married. Gabby's my wife, and her sister had a mannequin one time that she got on a yard sale or something, and that turned out to be possessed with stuff, and it was creating all kinds of havoc around the house, and so they finally had to just get rid of it, and it became someone else's problem. But a lot of people don't realize that spirits can attach themselves not just to people, but to articles, anything that they find familiar with. But speaking about being haunted, I'm being haunted with the idea it's time to go to commercial. And so we'll be back in 2 and 2. My guest tonight is Eric Perry with Haunted in New England, and we'll come back and talk some more about the paranormal.
KCAA Loma Linda, 1050 AM, K292 FQ Riverside, and K293 CF Moreno Valley.
The loss of a loved one is one of the most challenging experiences in a person's life. It's hard to know where to turn to make your loved one's final arrangements. Jesse Ruiz at Personal Funeral Planning in Ontario will treat you and your loved one with the respect you deserve. Jesse served in the Marine Corps in Desert Storm and understands what it takes to provide loyal, personalized, and empathetic service to those who need it most. The families of Michael Jackson, Brittany Murphy, Ed McMahon, and many others have trusted Jesse to provide them with the highest level of service and support. To work with Jesse, call 909-762-4027, 909-762-4027, or visit their website, www.4pfp.org. www.4pfp as in personalfuneralplanning.org. Jesse Ruiz and Personal Funeral Planning, veteran owned and operated, helping you plan a personal, lasting tribute for your loved one. www.4pfp.org.
Hey guys, this is Andrew Caravella. Just wanted to let you know that KCAA has a new listener line for all of you that have a phone. Now you can listen to KCAA in the grocery store, in the doctor's office, or when you want to pretend you're on the phone with someone just so that creeper will leave you alone. Call 720-835-3099 today and listen to your favorite KCAA radio shows. That number again, 720-835-3099. KCAA Radio, the station that leaves no caller or listener behind.
If you're looking for a full or part-time sales position and you have radio, TV, or print media experience, KCAA has a great opportunity waiting for you that pays the highest commissions in the market. KCAA is the only station in the IE that broadcasts on 3 frequencies, so advertisers receive 3 ads for 1 low rate. This makes KCAA a must-buy for every local business. If you're interested in a sales position with us, email CEO@kcaaradio.com.
And welcome back. You are tuned to KCAA Radio, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, We're on the World Wide Web at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John, and I am your host, Father John Reid. And a reminder that you can follow us on both Instagram and Facebook at Viewpoint with Father John. Also, this is when I get my begging shoes out, that this is a listener-supported show. So you are the ones who keep us on the air. So I ask you to please go to viewpointwithfatherjohn.com, and Father is spelled out. And click the support button and give what you can. For those of you who've been donating, thank you. We're on the air because of you. And again, I want to remind you to get a copy of my book, Close Your Eyes So You Can See Me, that this is a book about finding your own spiritual path, and that we're all God's children. God doesn't have stepchildren. And so whatever your path is, this is a way of helping you find what that is. And my guest tonight is Eric Perry, who is with Haunted in New England. And we're having a very interesting conversation. I wanted to say spirited, but that might be too much of a cornball thing to say, so I won't say spirited. But we're having a great conversation. And, little background. Gabby and I lived in a house for a little bit in northern Claremont that very much was possessed by a intelligent haunt. In fact, when we first moved in there, now in Claremont, there's a lot of rats. So let me give you that on the background. So I hear what I believe is in the attic, something being dragged like a desk. I'm thinking, these are some big rats or something. And then I realized it's just a little crawl space. There's no way that there's a desk up there that's being slid around. And it dawned on me, this is an entity trying to make their presence known. And this spirit really liked Gabby but didn't care much for me. And Gabby'd go, and it would actually turn her computer on for her 4 o'clock in the morning. And then she would hear what she thought was me in the kitchen, walking around, opening drawers, closing drawers. And so when she'd go to tell me something, she'd find out I'm in bed. I'm not in the kitchen. So we've had that kind of experience. And when we were moving out, it actually attacked one of the people helping us move and really terrified them. So have you had experience with families that call you out of desperation because they don't know what's going on? Do you have some of those?
Yeah, and we have a twofold, when we handle family kids, we have a twofold approach to that. One is education.
Okay.
The other second is to debunk it.
Now, when you say education, what does that mean? What are you educating them for? Or
we try to educate them. If it is a real haunting, we will educate them on how to either have the house cleansed, or how to go about living with the spirit if that's what they want to do.
Okay.
As long as it's not that children are not being involved and getting hurt. If the owner says, okay, we want to keep these here, we want to see what they can do. I said, against better advice, I really wish you would get rid of them, let them go into the light and get away from what they've already finished their business here. They're done. They're supposed to be moving on.
Right.
And some of the places that we have done, they do want to keep them.
Okay.
As more like a tourist attraction, as I call them, tourist ghosts.
Okay.
And a lot of people look at me and going, why do you use that term? I said, you're paying to go into a location at like Trans-Allegheny or St. Albans Sanitarium or one of these big hospitals. You're paying to actually get thrilled by a ghost.
Right.
So they're tourist ghosts.
Absolutely. Well, you know what? When I was maybe 10 years old, maybe 11. My mom, my brother, and I stayed on the Queen Mary in Long Beach. There was a conference going on, and they screwed up our reservation. So for the price of a little room, they gave us the presidential suite. And all night, this is before anyone knew about the hauntings on Queen Mary, the water would turn on, it would turn off. Someone would jiggle the handle on the toilet. The doorknobs would jiggle. And this went on all night long. And then years later, when they started doing the ghost tours, It's like, oh, I knew this before anyone even knew about it. I was just a little kid, and it was going on, so it was something else. Do you have any favorite stories that you like to share with our listeners?
Yeah, I actually have a really good one. Back in 2016, my mom was dying of cancer.
Oh, wow, I'm sorry.
And the end of 2015 into 2016, she lived her life in a hospice house.
Mm-hmm.
And I got a phone call from the hospital saying that I needed to get there because my mom was dying. At this time, I was living in Manchester, New Hampshire, and me and my wife at the time, we had to drive all the way over into Vermont,
Okay.
where she was. I didn't make it there in time when she passed.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But what she gave me as a gift was a whole different thing. I got into the room, I'm talking to my brother, and I looked towards the door of the hospital room. I looked towards it. There's my mother standing there.
Wow.
She is smiling. She is smiling at me, blowing me a kiss.
Mm-hmm.
She opened the door, and there was a white light, and she went through it.
Wow, that's a beautiful memory.
I considered that was her parting gift to me, to say, you need to see this.
Yeah. That's pretty powerful. I was a hospice chaplain for a number of years, and I've seen things like that with my patients when they would, many of them had me hold them during their last few moments. And I've seen the vortex open. I've seen the light. I've watched people go through, and people who haven't seen that, they just think that that's gobbledygook, that it really, there's nothing to it. But when you experience it, your life is changed forever. I mean, you never again can say, "Oh no, that doesn't exist." There's a lot of stuff out there.
It did change my life a lot, because I do now. I didn't before. They always say when you do a paranormal investigation, make sure you have protection.
Right.
And I never did. And ever since my mother did this and showed me, I wear a cross around my neck now.
Oh, very good.
And it makes me, I had it blessed and to protect me. And now, one of the things that not a lot of people know is I actually can see and speak to the dead.
Wow.
And it manifested a lot more, especially after my mother passed, after I saw that light.
Oh, very interesting. Now, I know on the religious side, one of the things that we're trained to do is for 3 days before we go out is we have to do prayer and fasting for at least 3 days. Now, do you do anything like that before you go out on an investigation, or what's the protocol for investigators?
Well, my team, we have a team of 18 here in New England.
Mm-hmm.
So we have 18 members. Our team members come from different religions. I even have a pagan who is actually on my team to handle occult stuff.
Okay.
And each person has their own thing of doing before they go on an investigation.
Very good.
I do praying, but for me, it's music. Music calms me. It soothes me before I go on an investigation, so I'm not so hyped up. And a couple of other things that I've learned over the years, Barry Fitzgerald from Ghost Hunters International, I learned from him. He's a good friend of mine. He taught me, instead of saying, "Is there anybody in this room? Show yourself or speak into this device."
Mm-hmm.
He said, "Try something a little different." And I was like, "Okay." He said, instead of saying, "Who's here?" just say something. Talk into this device. So I want to hear your voice. He said, instead of saying that, say, "Is there someone in this room that would like to communicate with me? Please come forward."
Okay.
And when I've done that now, when I say please come forward, I get responses.
Oh, interesting.
So if you try it with a different aspect instead of going in like you see with Ghost Adventures and all these other shows where they go and go, it's a demon, it's a demon, it's a demon. It's not a demon.
Right.
It's someone's mother, brother, sister, cousin, grandmother, grandfather. It's somebody's relative.
Yeah, it's funny that you would mention Zach and his crew because I'll be honest, I'm not a fan of their show, and I'll probably get a letter for saying that on the air, but that's okay. The ones I used to really like because they were really scientific about what they did was Ghost Hunters and Ghost Hunters International, because they didn't just try to get you to believe that they're having this sensation. They backed it up with scientific things. And if they couldn't back it up, they just marked it up as a personal experience, but not a certified, I'm using the word certified, haunting. And I think that's so important because some of the places just really, like Ghost Adventures, they just, they kind of take some of the credibility out of it because, well, they're entertaining for some people, but it's a shame because this is a real thing that needs to be pursued in my mind because a lot of people get affected by it. And when there's not good information, you don't know how to get help. And it's really a shame. So what would you tell somebody who's having experiences and they don't know what to make of it? What would be your advice to them?
One of the things that we do now is we tell them to start a journal.
Okay.
Write everything down that you're experiencing. This way we have documentation of what we're looking for, why we're in the place. It gives us a hand to try to figure out if they saw something, and then when we start digging into the history of the location, what was actually there beforehand. Was there already deaths inside the building or on the land, and stuff like that. We want to kind of dig into it. But with their journal, that gives us a first-hand experience of what they experienced in the home.
Okay.
And we try to recreate what they did, what happened that night. Not every recreation trying to see if it'll come back again at the same time, same thing, but it changes every time. They're not ghosts are not trained circus animals. They're not just going to show up when you throw them a Scooby snack and say, "Hey, come on out."
I'm sorry, that was just a great line. That was good. So you have them journal. I think that's a great idea. I do the same thing before I go in and do a house cleansing, or before I used to. I've gotten too old to do those now because of it seems like there's a central network that when one discovers what your infirmities are, it seems to go out to them all. At least it feels that way. And so in addition to journaling, now I know in real paranormal investigation, you try to debunk things so you can find out what really is spirit activity and what's just coincidental or made from something else. So how do you go about that?
Well, first off, what we do is when we check the house, we check everything from the electricity to the plumbing to the foundation of the house. We check the floors, all that. We do like almost like a home inspection on the property.
Why the foundation? I'm not sure about that. What is it you're looking for with the foundation?
You're looking for cracks and stuff like that in the foundation of the building. Sometimes the foundation of the building can be built, like here in New England. Some of our buildings are built on granite, which it happens to be a conductor for paranormal activity. Some are built on limestone, which happen to be
a big
also conductors. Yeah. And some of them have rivers that run right underneath them.
Ah, yes, the moving water is also conductive. Got you.
Right. So we look at all the aspects. We look at the property. We look at every aspect of the house. Now, we had a case that was in Lynn, Massachusetts, where we were called in by a friend of mine who she believed she was being haunted.
Okay.
But it wasn't what she thought it was. We got in there. We have radiation detectors and different meters that we use. And we started upstairs. We didn't get any activity. Then we went downstairs, didn't get any activity. Went to the basement, come to find out in the basement, she had a gas leak.
Oh, wow.
If we were not there that day, she would have died.
Wow. That's something else.
So, and she was a double mastectomy survivor, cancer survivor.
Wow. Now, when you go out and when other investigators go out, is there a charge for the services to go out and investigate?
Yeah, there is a charge. We charge a cup of coffee. We don't charge anything. We've been lucky enough where our clients have get us pizza for helping them.
Okay.
Or they'll buy us a dinner, or they'll get us a cup of coffee.
Okay, well, that's great. We're getting to our last couple minutes, so that's why I'm kind of shooting fast questions at you at the moment before we're totally out of time. Now, if someone needs to have an investigation, how would they look up paranormal research? Is there anything they would Google or?
Yeah, if someone wants to have an investigation do it at their home, first do the research on the team. Find out about the team before you bring them into the home. Mm-hmm. We do background checks on all our investigators, 100% background checks to make sure there's not wanted felons or anything of that nature.
Good.
I would say if you want somebody that's really good, reach out to my team, Haunted in New England. We do travel. We do go to other locations to find paranormal activity, and we're always there. You can always book. We have on our Facebook page where you can actually book into a Google calendar, and we can set you up.
That's great. Well, we're running out of time. I want to thank you for being a guest tonight and sharing some of your experiences with us. I know it had to be very interesting for many of our listeners. It's amazing how a lot of shows won't cover this because, all the stuff that's put out about it, but I think it's a very important topic so we can really know that there are some things beyond what we see with our eyes. Some of them are friendly, some of them are not. And it's important to know what you're dealing with. So my guest tonight has been Eric Perry, and for those of you just who tuned in for the first time, welcome to Viewpoint with Father John. I thank you for allowing us to spend another hour in your living room or car if you're listening on the radio. And if no one told you this week that they love you, let me be the first. Thank you for tuning in to Viewpoint with Father John. We'll be back next week.
KCAA Loma Linda.